The countdown is on to January 20th, but there is still one very big question. Will we ever get an official investigation into the COVID-19 vaccines? The largest research study on the jab was recently republished after a successful peer review, and its findings are shocking. Here to break it all down for us is Dr. Peter McCullough. He's a renowned cardiologist and leading voice in the COVID-19 vaccine transparency. So, Dr. McCullough, in your medical opinion, how reliable is this study, and what can you tell us about it?
The study relied on autopsies that were done and actually were in the peer-reviewed literature, so they gave lots of details on the findings. All the data were extracted, they were put in to independent files and then independently adjudicated with knowledge now what we know the vaccines cause in terms of their safety warnings. And what was determined is that about 74% of all the deaths that have occurred after vaccination that have come to autopsy, in fact, the vaccines caused the death.
So can you just break this down a little bit in terms of the context, right? And what people have been saying over the last few years. Shouldn't this shock people, or should they be surprised?
The peer-reviewed literature has now about 4,000 papers on fatal and non-fatal vaccines, disabilities, and deaths. So no, it's not a shock. The very first peer-reviewed publication of a man dying after the COVID-19 vaccine was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in the summer of 2021. And the FDA has in its warnings that the vaccines do cause heart damage or myocarditis. And I can tell you clinically as a cardiologist, myocarditis, its most common manifestation after vaccination is sudden death or cardiac arrest.
So when we look at the mRNA vaccines, where do they go from here? Do they have a future? Do you think that they get shut down at this point?
There are multiple calls to shut it down, that the platform is not safe, that none of the COVID-19 vaccines are safe for human use. The World Council for Health in the UK was the first to call for that. Now Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, Doctors for COVID Ethics. There are now literally dozens of calls for the vaccines to be removed. They're published in the peer-reviewed literature. So I expect they will be taken off the market. Largely, the crisis is closed at this point in time. We can treat residual cases. The vaccines never were compelling.
Do you think the censorship is stopping? I mean, my understanding is that this study was removed from preprints less than 24 hours before it posted. So this seems like it's an ongoing problem. It seems like there's more and more data, as you're saying, where this shouldn't be shocking, as you say, and yet we're still censoring information. So what's the path forward here?
The censorship in the medical literature is significant. It comes at the editorial reviewer and the publisher level. What's unprecedented are papers being fully published, contracted, copyrighted, indexed in the National Library of Medicine, and then having them be retracted for no specific reason. That violates the Committee on Publication Ethics guidelines. And that's what's so unprecedented about this. I'm the editor of a major journal, and I have been an editor of two major journals in the past. And I can tell you, it's my estimate that only 1% of these papers are fully getting through and being published, only 1%. So that 4,000 papers describing all these concerning side effects is just the tip of the iceberg. And what I'm seeing in daily practice now is a steady stream of those who have vaccine, heart damage, blood clots, and disabilities, unfortunately.
We are getting closer to the Trump administration taking over. Give us your sense on what you've seen overall with the Trump cabinet picks so far.
Yeah, I can't comment on any of the physician picks because I'm a doctor myself, and that advice and consent process needs to go without any bias. Trump clearly is picking individuals that America has great aspirations for what's going to be done in these positions. I mean, let me give you some examples. Head of the FDA, people are looking for the COVID vaccines to be pulled off the market. Head of the National Institutes of Health, people in my circles want a ban on gain-of-function research done in the United States. So we don't have another deadly virus come out of a lab, this time in America. For the CDC, people want the 1986 vaccine injury compensation liability shield to be lifted, the companies to be responsible for their products, and they want vaccine mandates for children to attend school or students in school or the military. They want all mandates for vaccines to be banned. That way people can just take vaccines for personal protection and based on their own risk-benefit equation instead of being forced into it.
It will be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot of hope and a lot of momentum and energy. One thing that I'm particularly interested in political science world is as a little reconciliation or justice in terms of some of the things that have occurred, right, that we've all been complaining about over the last few years. Do you have any thought about accountability for those who were in charge of the COVID response and regime? I mean, is this something that you're concerned with?
I'm greatly concerned, and the 500-page plus report issued by Brad Wenstrup, the chair of the Coronavirus Select Subcommittee, while it found many problems with pandemic response, Americans are greatly disturbed with that report. But in that report, there is no call for special prosecutors. And people have pointed out that we should have a special prosecutor for crimes committed in the creation of SARS-CoV-2, a joint U.S.-Chinese collaboration, that there were crimes committed in the suppression of early treatment protocols to reduce hospitalization and death. Then lastly, crimes committed in the vaccine campaign, that we should have special prosecutors and name officially targets, subjects, and witnesses.
Well, Dr. Peter McCullough, thank you so much for coming on the show and making your Blaze News Tonight debut. We really appreciate your time.